Hey, welcome to MTEK 2023. I cannot believe this is our third year already. Unbelievable. Time has gone by so fast. We've got a terrific lineup for you today, and I have the distinct pleasure of kicking things off by introducing you to Dr. Moudy Elbayadi. He's Chief Technology Officer over at Shutterfly. He has a ton of experience as a technology leader, both in cybersecurity, software development, over 25 years. He's built all kinds of applications on the consumer side, SaaS side, enterprise side. Right now at Shutterfly, he's leading the company's technology, e-commerce transformation, cybersecurity, software development, mobile apps, and ML-driven personalized experience initiatives. Don't know why he has time to even come talk to us. He's a busy guy. He's led large software development teams at Brain Corp. They make autonomous robots. How cool is that? WAG, LifeLock, Symantec Norton Security, and Intuit. Please help me to welcome Dr. Moudy Elbayadi.
Hi, everybody, and thanks so much for the opportunity, and really excited to share with you some of my thoughts here. In many ways, a lot of this space is very much a work in progress, and I'm going to share with you my own learnings and share what I have been working through, and hopefully it serves you. So first, we'll start with some foundational thoughts. And I'm going to use some of these quotes as really as grounding for the conversation that I want to have with you all today. The first one is Steve Jobs at the launch of iPad 2. And he says something, he says, it's in Apple's DNA that technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with liberal arts, married with the humanities that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. And as I'm talking about AI, I think I want to keep coming back to this idea of marrying the humanities, the arts, really the underlying philosophy for how we should think about AI. Um, and also reaching even further to Ludwig Wittgenstein. And there's really two critical elements here he mentions. The limits of my language mean the limits to my world. And I'm going to keep referring back to this as I talk about AI and what's happening in that domain. And also to understand is to know what to do. So I'm hopeful that this talk, if I'm somewhat successful today, really you'll get two things. One is you'll maybe look at AI in a different kind of way, and also understanding has to lead to some kind of action. So ultimately, there's enough. I get you excited enough, enthusiastic enough to even explore further. I imagine you're probably doing something around that and reading about it. But hopefully, I am able to inspire you to take some more action to help drive some transformation. Uh, so I started working on this presentation for a few months now. The genesis of this was actually a lecture at University of Texas, Austin, and I had to continue to kind of rethink and recreate the slides, partly just because how fast and how rapid the changes are happening. And it was literally up until last night, I was making some edits. So it is such a moving target. And again, in my entire experience in technology, I've never seen that level of rapid innovation and how fast things are evolving and changing. So part of that is kind of stay open and stay loose because just seems like every day there's some new developments and new interesting things that are truly going to change the world and change how we think about stuff. So a couple more grounding slides. And again, I'm just trying to connect to the technology and the history we've been in the last 2 decades. And in 2011, there was this notion about how software is going to eat the world. This was like a really popular thing in 2011. And Andreessen says we're in the middle of a dramatic and broad technological and economic shift in which software companies are poised to take over large swaths of the economy. Probably don't have to go through all of those, but whether we're talking about Uber, Airbnb, I mean, there was a group of companies that truly, Web 2.0 was really around how SaaS is just taking over things that we normally would not have seen before. 12 years later, Web 3.0, I'm kind of defining as Web 3.0 is this notion of AI plus SaaS. So now Andreessen comes back and says, in short, anything that people do with their natural intelligence. And I really like this word about natural intelligence. Today can be done much better with AI. And we'll be able to take on new challenges that have been impossible to tackle without AI, from curing all diseases to achieving interstellar travel. Clearly inspirational in that sense. So, so I'm going to try to build this again going to kind of operate at a first principles and lay out a little bit of the framework, and then I'm going to jump into a lot of the applications, and hopefully you'll see how by doing this and kind of building these building blocks, you'll hopefully be able to see kind of what's evolving and how technology is evolving, and what is all this stuff going on with AI. It'll help you maybe see it better, interpret it better, conceptualize it better. So starting with foundation, like intelligence, what is intelligence? The ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. Intelligence includes all these related things as, intelligence is ability to reason, you problem solve, you can plan, abstract thinking, and you could argue what the biggest difference that human beings have been able to do across, above any other creatures, right, is that we've been able to apply and reason and think ahead and put ourselves in the future. So intelligence has been this major breakthrough in terms of what's made human beings, even among other sapiens, what has made us allow us to get to the place we're in. Artificial, it's made or produced by human beings rather than occurring naturally, especially as a copy of something natural. And then artificial intelligence, a simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. And then I would say these are kind of the traditional approaches of what's intelligence, what's artificial, and what we're today calling artificial intelligence. And then the other kind of really grounding thing is intelligence is a good thing. Okay, I think we all want more intelligence. So I start that as a real fundamental premise is that the more intelligence, the better. Okay, intelligence is not something we can have like, oh, we have enough intelligence, because intelligence allows us to achieve goals, it allows us to solve problems. So the more intelligence, whether it was about figuring out how to fly, whether it's figuring out how to create nuclear, both all of the different use cases in terms of both nuclear energy, nuclear weapons, but it's intelligence that has allowed us to solve problems. It allowed us to navigate the world. And navigate the world more effectively in all of the different ways, right? Make better decisions. So again, foundationally, intelligence is a very, very good thing. At a societal level, right? Societies where there's just more intelligence and more capabilities, you have advances in healthcare. It's really interesting to see how much we went even in the last 150 years or so, from the average age being 36 to the average age being now 60, 70, 80, right, depending on where you are in the world. But it's been intelligence and applying intelligence across finding out, if you could defeat viruses and bacteria, you could actually live much longer. So societal level intelligence has improved healthcare, improvements in quality of life, ability to create knowledge and make that knowledge, there's this notion of we have been able to dematerialize things using this notion of intelligence. So anybody today in the world can have access to every book ever written, because it's all been dematerialized in a way that you can have access to it. We've dematerialized everything related to music. So you think about the cost that it would take when Beethoven created his, for Beethoven to play his symphony, and how much cost of that production versus the cost to actually listen to that symphony today. One would be, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. The other one is less than a penny. And then augmenting human intelligence with AI. Again, I'm just thinking, there's all these different kinds of ideas here around. It's this notion of how do you support each person in a hyper personalized state. And I'll come back to this idea around how we're able to get all this level of assistance as we break through with using AI to augment human intelligence. Helps us better coordinate activities, helps us to see and gain insights that are below our perceptions. There was a story around, just by able to take a picture of someone's retina, AI was able to determine that this person had an early onset of, there was a problem with their eyes, and it was basically discovered by AI versus by a doctor. So it's this idea of like all these things that are happening that literally are below our level of perceptions, amplify scientific discoveries, which we talked about, optimize complex systems. The notion of managing really complex operations, right? How do we make nuclear power and managing nuclear power plants far more safer, and that is a really clean and efficient source of energy. Yet, we've all been kind of really terrified of what happens when you have a problem with a nuclear power plant. So again, augmenting human intelligence with AI could be a really good and valuable thing. I'm going to just maybe build out really fast here again, kind of just grounding on the core components. And I'm sharing this with you because as we talk about the advances of AI, you'll start to see that we are certainly reaching a point where we need to use new language to describe the changes in technology. And this idea about, the notion of just artificial is probably no longer going to serve us as well as picking up different kinds of language to describe this new technical capabilities. And one way of describing it is really like more around the super intelligence that really extend a lot of the core notion of intelligence as we've learned it and is seen applied in humans. So coming back to this idea of the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. And again, this is where I want to challenge our language. And airplanes, we don't call airplanes artificial birds. And if we just called airplanes artificial birds, we would have missed the real opportunities, what airplanes really do, because they allow us to be able to do a lot more than what birds are capable of. When you think about jets and F-35s, phones are not artificial telegraphs, right? We're able to use, a smartphone today, and a touchscreen is far more beyond an artificial telegraph. Electric lights are not artificial candles. Light, and you think about LEDs, it goes way beyond, extends way beyond the fundamental early notion of, an electric light. A light bulb is an artificial candle. And again, you see multiple options, multiple examples here about artificial humans creating robots. When I worked at Brain Corp, the robotics and the way we're thinking about them is far extends behind artificial humans, because the idea is that the robots can take on tasks and do things in a way that would almost nearly be impossible for humans to be able to do, especially humans to be able to do around the clock. Online learning, we've seen how much, and to me, this is just an amazing thing. As someone who grew up in Egypt, thinking about online learning and bringing education to the masses, and again, how much the cost comes near zero to be able to educate essentially millions of people using, and again, online learning is a far more powerful thing than the notion of artificial schools. So again, and so on, artificial horses, right? Like our cars and how we think about cars today far extend the notion or the early concept of, and early on, believe it or not, like, the early cars were considered, horseless carriages. But that limited our language. Our language limited what we're able to do. When you think about a car today, it extends far beyond a horseless carriage. So back to this notion, the limits of my language mean the limits of my world. And to me, this conceptual framework really allows us to think about how we look at these new technologies and how they're able to say how our mental language and our frameworks. But when we open up our mental language and frameworks to capture new capabilities like personalized medicine, decentralized finance, AI, we're able to expand the vision and be able to look at kind of far beyond our current capabilities. And this is really what I want to keep coming back to as we think about how AI can help us improve and really help us improve and deliver real breakthroughs today and real unlocks in our current business context, right? So this is a business group, business leaders and technology leaders. So a lot of this will be around how we can think about this technology to help us unlock real business problems we have today. So expanding the limits of our language allows us to transcend the limits of our world. And we approach this new technology with kind of an open mindset to see some of these possibilities. And even as late as, I think it was as late as Monday, when OpenAI talked about some of the new developments here. And again, little by little, you're starting to see a world that's going to be shaped by autonomous agents, which again, I'm kind of excited to share what that world is going to look like and how we need to start engaging with that today. So one way of framing this, again, I'm going to keep giving you guys kind of different tools of different ways of thinking. you pick the ones that make sense and that resonate. Some of these things may not make sense or they may not resonate for you. So and that's actually okay. It's a little bit of giving you different frameworks and different concepts to try. So we're all familiar with carbon-based intelligence. That's who we are. And another way of looking at this is silicon-based intelligence. And depending on if you remember your chemistry classes, silicon is the second most common element that we have. So oxygen is number one, silicon is number two. So this idea of us thinking about, not is it just it's artificial intelligence, it's artificial as in, taking whatever humans have done, it's artificial. Starting to think about this is carbon-based intelligence, that's what we're made of, and the rise of silicon-based intelligence. Obviously, there's a correlation there, but it's just another way of thinking about this that would expand our vision for what we can be doing with some of these technologies. Just a thought for, I figured if I'm going to talk about AI, I should talk about a few of the companies that are doing interesting things. OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, Meta, probably a host of other companies. I wrote on the top here, foundational models plus thousands of applications, thousands of different ways where, you're leveraging these models as essentially, think of them as the operating systems. In many ways, there's a ton of open source ones. There's open source, there's closed source. And ultimately, I don't think it's going to be so much about which model, which language learning, which large language model are you using. It's going to be really based on, there's going to be more and more and more. We're at this moment in time where definitely there's a lot of, there's an explosion of these and everybody's trying to compete. I will tell you probably maybe one big recommendation here is absolutely spend the time to actually create accounts, spend the time on every one of these, because you'll get to see, you'll get to see the benefits and the power of Claude over GPT, over what Google might be doing, and you'll see the pros and cons, the benefits, and which one. I'll give you, like one example. Anthropic was not aware of. There's an author, and he's actually a really incredible thought leader. His name is Jim Dottie. Claude wasn't aware of Jim Dottie. ChatGPT was aware of Jim Dottie, right? He wrote a book, The Magic Shop. And so, but the idea is one may be skilled for others, one may not be skilled for others. But the idea, I think, for us at this stage is really explore and experiment. I love that Claude had a context size of 100,000 tokens, which is really, really large. So the notion of you can have a much different, deeper conversation with 100,000 token window, for example. So, but the idea here is, I would just say embrace all of the tools. It's more important right now to learn and engage with all these different tools, as opposed to just picking one or saying one is better than the other. I think that at this moment in time, it's all about just kind of learning, and it'll just help us all be better leaders, and kind of how do we guide our own companies and how we share that perspective. Okay, I want to spend a few moments a little bit into practical application. So if this first section was around blending and understanding the underlying philosophy of how we approach technology, because it truly does shape our worldviews, and connecting this notion about, keep coming back to both Wittgenstein as well as Steve Jobs around, the true magic is when you blend the sciences with the arts. And how do we bring that, and how do we bring that sense of humanity as we think about some of these applications? So at the moment, I want to say I'm almost creating like a wonderful buffet of all these different ideas. And again, part of this is to try to express all of the various changes that are happening. And and as you think about your own business problems and what would make a difference, hopefully some of these things are like, oh, this is really interesting. I could see how this new innovation can help me solve this problem. So, okay, first, another quote. Scott Galloway is, again, just a really interesting guy about how he thinks. I appreciate how one of these quotes here, he has said recently, any company that creates more than 10 billion in shareholder value does one of two things. They either extend time, right? Or extend time, more time, or save time, or they enhance time. And I thought it's such an interesting framework about framework for, and then I said, okay, well, let me test what Scott Galloway's talking about here. So you look at the most valuable companies, and you'll see some companies, and you kind of have to say, okay, well, I can see how Apple is able to enhance time. And again, you can kind of go look through these, whether it's Google, Meta, Amazon, etc. So clearly, there's something to be said about companies now. NVIDIA is obviously powering so much of this. So, right, I mean, some of these are maybe more self-explanatory than others, but it's really interesting to see how the companies that are truly this notion about enhancing time or expanding time. I thought it's a really interesting framework. And again, the question becomes, how do we bring that back for every company that we represent and every business that we represent? And what are we doing, both whether that's your role is inside your company, right, to serve something inside the company, or something to your external customers, whether that be consumers or enterprises. I thought it's a really kind of a powerful way of thinking about it. And one way, again, another framework here is AI is the ultimate time machine. And when you think about what does a time machine do? Can it extend time? Can it enhance time? Can it allow you to do a lot of things? Really, really rapidly. And it's this idea of playing with time is just another way of thinking about AI and how it can kind of expand our thinking. So now one notion, and this is really, really old. This is now December 2022, which in AI time is almost like 20 years ago. I thought this was probably one of the first early tweets. I mean, this was probably a tweet at that time, right? Around how an early version of GitHub Copilot was helping in terms of the code development. And this is again a very senior technical leader and engineer who's able to say that this is what was happening 80%. I was like, my God, this is amazing. And of course, this was, I would say, primitive technology given where we are today. So back to this idea is like, okay, one of the applications is, all right, how can this help us in terms of product development? There's a lot I could go in here and want to be sensitive of my time limits, but really, especially product development, especially as it pertains to building something new. So when we're talking about product development, we're talking about how can I mock up something really, really fast? It is no longer, you don't have to spend a lot of time to try to come up with a workable concept. And again, I'm going to come back to this idea, but product development is definitely a core area, again, whether you're developing something internally or developing something externally. So the new question, and this is probably the question of the last 2 weeks, is, okay, so what happens when AI can see, hear, and speak? And now these are examples from ChatGPT, but again, I think I'm using these as examples, right? Ultimately, this week is ChatGPT. 2 weeks from now, it could be Microsoft doing something. It could be Google doing something. But again, the idea is the proofs of concepts here, as opposed to marrying any provider. So on the left-hand side here, convert these assembly directions. So it looks like an IKEA, or one of those crazy instructions that nobody knows how to understand. And you take a picture of it with your phone and you say, like, what the heck is this? Help me understand this. Think about that from the context of if you're elderly and you can't read or you can't see the instructions. Think about this from the context of the instructions are in English and I want them in my native tongue, or the instructions are in Spanish and I want them something else. So just think about the power of just taking a picture of something and and then ask the question like, what is this? Rank these men in attractiveness. Okay, sorry, I can't help with that. But this idea of, this is what I mean when I say silicon-based intelligence. And how can this apply to your business, right? You take a picture. Here's a picture of the front page of the New York Times. In how many use cases do we have in our respective companies where, maybe we think about customer care. Somebody has a broken thing. Somebody has a problem with a product that you have, right? And either it's broken or it needs to be adjusted. Think about how easy it would be and how powerful it would be to say, please take a picture of the issue, upload it to us, and you have your customer agent AI that basically looks at it, identifies what it is, and applies either some of the fine-tuning model of some of your own internal data, and is able to come back and share and basically solve that problem for you. That's really, again, a really powerful use case. What happens when AI can see? Okay, so a few more things here as I wind down. This is another great example of what happens when AI can hear and see. Can you guys, did I make sure? I think I lost my slides here. 1 second. Okay, hopefully you guys can see my slides again. So this is an example of showing how ChatGPT is now taking the screenshot. I'm kind of back to a little bit of this prototyping. So you're able to show a mock-up of as a mock-up, using something that a designer can do, and then again having AI basically build the code behind it is extremely powerful. By again, and whether that is now you do something on the screen, you're whiteboarding something, you could whiteboard the business logic and have that basically write that in Python or whatever language. This is, to me, is like the power of what happens when AI can both hear, see, and speak. Okay, the most recent thing, I think this is probably just what was announced this week, and I'm gonna wrap up here. But this is also just extremely powerful, because the world we're kind of moving into now is what happens when there are agents and an AI app store, where essentially you're able to build all of these different things. So think about it again as an internal AI, an internal AI app store versus also an external AI app store. So think about this as, now this is something you could potentially, build your own apps and monetize them. These apps could be built for internal usage. And again, you're moving into a world where this is like, this is maybe the second iteration, the third iteration, when you have these GPTs, and you have these agents working and collaborating with each other. And now you're in a world where humans are essentially coordinating activities across multiple agents, but essentially your company has, again, I don't want to come back to the carbon-based versus silicon-based. Your company has carbon-based employees and silicon-based employees that are working. They have their jobs, they have their roles, they have supervisors who they check in with, they're able to interact. And again, to me, this is like this is the world that we need to start thinking about, and how do we prepare for. And you could see, like anything else, these topics start really simple. A math mentor, a sticker wizard. I mean, so some of these could be cute. You could have these for whether it's a writing coach, a finance coach, etc. So that is this is now really kind of going into how we should think about building this ChatGPT agents, and think about, again, what are those use cases for our companies. So again, I maybe skip this, but again, this was just an app that was built very quickly around helping you optimize what your tweets are going to look like. So loaded some data, right? Loaded some data, analyzed the data, and now it can help you with both, not only the content, which I thought was really powerful, but also not only the content, but also the time of when you should actually post something. So one other kind of final anchoring thought as I leave you here is, cognitive offload will have a profound impact on our productivity. And I think this notion of, one of the questions that we're going to keep sitting with is, okay, well, what happens to humans? What are humans good for? And the idea is that, can we really focus our ability to be creative, our ability to envision things, and do more of that offloading to these agents who are helping us augment and solving problems for us, while we think about kind of the bigger problems. So there's a way of being able to do that. And quite frankly, in a current climate where companies are trying to compete, companies are trying to compete in an environment where highly inflationary environment, there's a lot of power to be able to say, how do I use my employees, my carbon-based employees, as best as I possibly can. So a couple more ideas. This, to me, these are the kinds of things I'm honestly thinking a lot about, is this idea of, especially in the world where a lot of people are still working remotely, they're not working in an office setting, how can we create AI mentors for all of our employees? And these AI mentors are able to support you regardless of where you are, as in your own career journey. I thought about my own career, having strong mentors who were with me when I first started transitioning from college to work, and how much, if you're a college grad starting out, and you're starting out working from your own home and sitting on Zoom all day. There's a lot of power to be had here around building that. And again, this notion of mentorship really along the life cycle, whether you're starting out working in, first year out of college, to all the time you're, where you are in your mid-career, where you are towards the end of your career, and how do you get the mentorship and support throughout the entire journey. Growth hacking, I talked a little bit about this notion of growth hacking, right? Every company is trying to create what other things can we do to unlock, what other things can we do to unlock our business, what other things can we do to keep growing. And this idea now is, what happens when growth hacking and the idea of launching a lot of prototypes faster, what happens when you can drive the cost significantly lower to being able to understand how you can keep giving compelling offers to your customers. Customer success, complete end-to-end personalized journeys. And then finally, I just want to maybe share a few things. I work for Shutterfly.com. We are in the middle of holiday card season. Holiday season is probably the biggest part. And these are images that I created. Okay, they're in the style of Thomas Kincaid. And there's a lot of people that love this art style. But this is what AI, and this was, I think, DALL-E 3. This was DALL-E 3 examples of holiday cards in the style of, right? Because I think there's copyright protection, but I think it was in the characteristic. I don't think they use the word style anymore, in the characteristic of Thomas Kincaid, but it's pretty authentic. The other interesting thing is, if you look at the left-hand side, I thought this was just the one last thought here is, AI is not always perfect. So on the right-hand side, it created this nice Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Okay, on the left-hand side, I'm not sure what Harry Christmas is, and Season's Harry Greetings. So you could see that there's, this is also a work in progress. And I thought that was just really interesting how even I gave it the same prompts. Sometimes the prompts don't always apply. Here's an idea of saying, I'm going to create this was a mock-up of trying to create, how do you personalize holiday greetings? And this was all, again, generated by some prompting around idea of creating like a mock-up of what a site would look like. Again, would everything be like this be applied? But I'm just trying to, again, show the power of being able to use some of these capabilities to help us solve some of the problems that we have. I want to maybe end here. One way of thinking about this is to follow the innovator's dilemma curve. Okay, and the innovator's dilemma, if anyone is familiar with that work, a lot of times the new startups always start with this area where they're the ankle biters. You never start by saying, I'm going to go directly compete with Cisco on day one. You start SMB, right? You start with small business. But you keep working and you make your way up. And where all of a sudden, Cisco wakes up and they realize, wow, this little company is now competing with me. So the idea of following that curve is start small, start simple, build your capabilities step by step, look for the quick wins. What is the low-hanging fruit? What are the easy issues? You can rapidly prototype as you learn, and then use those small wins to build momentum and learnings. And over time, you'll be able to take on bigger challenges. But the idea is really what's important here is like really start now and start engaging with this. And again, I want to continue to encourage you to think about, how you relate to the technology and how you think about AI could really either open up a lot of venues and open up a lot of ways, and open up that vision versus limiting it to, how we could maybe a limited view of what artificial intelligence could really be. And again, I'm delighted to share some of this thinking with you. And I hope it was helpful, and look forward to the rest of the sessions.
Hey, Moudy, that was absolutely stunning. I'm stealing a whole bunch of your stuff and pretend that I invented it, man. I love the thing about planes are not artificial birds. That's now one of my new slogans. But we do have a question that came in. It says, you say more intelligence is a good thing, but humans evolve much slower than technology has. Does this pose a risk to overwhelm the human brain?
I think the risk is in our our enthusiasm and our exuberance. That the concern is probably not to overwhelm the human brain. The concern is, do we build something that is beyond beyond our intelligence and beyond our ability to control it. I think the concern, and it's probably yet for another talk, of the notion of responsible intelligence and responsible AI, and what does that actually mean, and what are the ethics behind it? Because there's definitely concern. And the last picture I had here was this AI summit. Every world, every government is like, hey, we got to slow down, but underneath they're like, I got to get to this stuff first.
Yeah.
Right. So the notion is, and this we got into this place. It's a little bit like nuclear. When everybody was trying to build a nuclear bomb, right? We don't want anyone else to have access to nuclear weaponry, but we, as in whoever the we is, wants to have all those capabilities. And I think those are some of the things that we absolutely need to be mindful of.
Got it. Yeah, the social implications. You started this with a slide that talked about, hey, technology is great and wonderful, but actually, the humanities side and the social side of things are where the big differentiators are for that. Where do you see, to your point, this arms race of AI, either on the commercial or governmental side? How do you think we're going to link in the social side of this? I know that's a 1 hour long topic, I know, but we got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I don't pretend to have answers. I think what I have tried to do almost on a daily basis is I find that the more I engage with the technology, the more I understand it. It's back to that quote: "To understand is to know to understand is to know what to do," so to speak. So I think part of it is we have to engage, and what I encourage people to do, and in my company, even as I talk about AI, a lot of folks very quickly jump to the easy answers. Is like, what does that mean? Does that mean all of our employees are going to be fired? Does that mean everybody's going to be replaced by AI? And I would just encourage us all to say, like, let's struggle with the questions and not go into black or white, as in AI is gonna have zero problems and it's gonna be wonderful, or AI is gonna bring the end of humanity. I think we have to keep struggling with it and thinking about that. So as opposed to kind of like, I think when you jump to an extreme conclusion immediately, we're not grappling enough with it to think about what does that look like. I think I had I ran out of time, but I think I had one other quote that said, AI is not going to replace humans. I think you've seen it probably around. AI is not going to replace humans. It's humans using AI that are going to replace other workers. And the idea is, it's like, there's going to be, how do we arm ourselves with the knowledge and expertise, as opposed to just AI is going to replace all of us tomorrow.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm the first one probably to go. I'm probably the most replaceable person out there. But anyway, Moudy, I thank you so much for spending time and dropping some wisdom bombs on us. I was thoroughly engaged. I think our audience was too. Folks, we're lucky. We have our VC Roundtable coming up. Same bat channel, same bat screen. So looking forward to that. Thanks again, Moudy. Awesome.
Thanks again, everybody. Cheers.